Hey guys, Tarke here, and after all the Burning Arrow hype and the fact that I am playing next League duo with a Scorching Ray quadcast cultist who's doing temp chains, enfeeble, flammability, any weakness, I'm thinking I should probably play some Burning Arrow. So, what we did today on stream is we spent about 3 fucking hours on Path of Building, just going through all the different ascendancy options, going for loads of different trees, and trying to come up with the best setup that I could. Now, obviously, this is pre the 2.6 final skill tree changes. This is basically me speculating, making rough paths. When we get the updated tree in probably, 5 days or so, I will do an updated video. But for now, this is what we're going with. Now, with all of this, I'm going to be using a benchmark DPS from Mathel's Burning Arrow character. Now, Mathel did a really good job with his character, and he absolutely decimated Shaper with it. And this is what his build looked like at level 90. Now, a few things that I do want to just quickly point out. Path of Building isn't taking into account his penetration from Mastermind of Discord, and it's doing silly things with elemental equilibrium. So, yeah. His actual DPS is a lot higher than this 208k when you factor in EE and Mastermind of Discord. One thing I will just say though is I am planning around my guy that I'm dueling with, who will be activating EE, so I will have EE active in all of my builds, and I will be going around with even higher levels of penetration because of the quadcast that I'm rocking with. So basically, the goal of my build was to have comparable levels of damage, because if my damage is anywhere near this, then I know I can clear all the content in the game, because Math will face roll all the content in the game. But doing it in a sort of life-friendly package, I prefer life, and it's a little bit more friendly for a league starter. So basically, we want to be close to these numbers. This is really all that matters. So with that in mind, let's jump over to what I've come up with. Now, we've done this with basically every single ascendancy, and you can roughly work out your DPS with the extra ignite. What you can do is you can edit the text you can inflict up to 2 ignites on an enemy, and you can get an idea of what your ignite damage will be at. But for the sake of this argument, we're going to just pretend that the jewel hasn't been released yet, and I'm just keeping an open socket into all of my things. Now, before I look at the trees, I want to quickly cover 1 or 2 pieces of gear just to clear up some stuff. This is a crit build. We're using a Death's Opus, and we're using Lionized Vision. We're using Lionized Vision because it gives level 15 Pierce in the chest. So if we put our Burning Arrow in the chest, which we will, we get a 7 link. Now, Lionized Vision is a very powerful piece of body armor. The main issue is it's pure armor. So most of the time you can't use it in projectile builds because of the amount of red gems. In our build, we're using up to 4 red gems or 3 red gems, making it very easy to get the colors, meaning we can use this chest piece. We are getting Pierce from the chest. That's why Pierce isn't in my links. The other important things, I'm using a Zoph's Blood to get Avatar of Fire, allowing me to use a Drill Neck with her. You can use a Signal Fire instead of a Drill Neck. That will be less damage, but it means you don't have to run Zoph's Blood. So mess around with it until you can get hold of a Zoph's Blood. Using something like a Signal Fire would be the way to do it. You want to have 100% conversion. Very, very important. Why am I using a Death's Opus over a Zoph's Nurture? I've covered this a few times on stream, but very basically, this build's one weakness is crit chance, and we struggle with crit. Let's use that version because that's actually better. For old one. So the main weakness is crit. You don't want to use the crit strikes gem, and we have just enough crit on the tree and gear with the Death's Opus. We don't need to use the gem. The second you drop the Death's Opus bow, you need to run Zoph's Nurture, you then need to run GMP, and you then need to run Increased Critical Strikes. It is a DPS loss, a massive, massive DPS loss. Don't do it. For everything else, for the sake of this setup, I've just gone with bog standard gear with the appropriate enchant, and I've gone for very basic rings. A pair of 2 diamond rings, they have the exact same stats. They have % fire damage. You can craft this with essences. Tier 2 wed roll, and some accuracy. The other thing that is active is a alchemist sulfur flask, a diamond flask, and a silver flask. And then the 2 jewels that I have input is just a generic double damage duel with a life roll. So that's everything that's going into this. As for the skills, our main setup is Burning Arrow, and Burning Arrow, Fire Pen, Weapon Elemental Damage, less duration, slower projectiles, and yes, Elemental Proliferation. Now, you'd say, but dude, what about the Zoph's Nurture? Zoph's Nurture gives you Prolif for free. Zoph's Nurture Prolif and Elementalist Prolif is only a 12-yard radius. The gem is a 16-yard radius. Because we're getting Pierce for free off the chest, we can use the Elemental Prolif. And again, just to prove a point, look at our current DPS numbers, 297954. If you take off Ellie Prolif, because we're running a Zoph's Nurture, put in GMP, take out less duration, and put on increased crit strike, because you would have to do that. And we swap the Death's Opus to a Zoph's Nurture. Boom. The numbers, surprisingly, have gone down. This does free you up to a different neck piece, but the numbers have gone down by a massive, massive margin. So, basically, the reason the setup is the way it is to get these big, juicy numbers. I've done this on purpose. Try not to question it too much. Other stuff is all just kind of whatever. We have a Flame Golem, we have Herald of Ash, we have Grace, we have a Decoy Totem, we have a Wild Burning Arrow setup. Let's get into the trees. So these are what the trees look like. Now, the main sort of options that we've gone through are Chieftain, Berserker. There is a one non-crit Elemental version, but I would not recommend it. A Slayer, a Deadeye, and a Assassin. So they all have their own little caveats. Chieftain, this is the one time I'd actually recommend Chieftain. And the way that we've done our Ascendancy, we go for Moon's Presence. The reason why we go for it is you're dropping Decoy Totems on bosses anyway. So you drop the Decoy Totem and it activates this effect. This is a huge multiplier and is very nice defensive. The Totem taunts, we take 10% less damage. Anything near totems deals 8% less damage. You drop a Decoy Totem, that's 18% damage reduction. Seems good. We get lots of juicy regen, making stuff like Blood Rage very easy. Increased burning damage against burning enemies. It's decent. Chance to Ignite is wasted because we're a crit build. Some fire damage, some life regen. Fire Pen is obviously really nice. The Leech is obviously really nice. And getting the 20% of Fizz as extra fire if we've killed recently is obviously huge. This is a really nice multiplier. And we get Endurance Charge Generation to boot. So basically this is like a very nice, well-rounded defensive and offensive Ascendancy option, giving Endurance Charges and all of that good stuff. The routing's pretty straightforward. Get the life, travel through. You can take the Proj Speed instead of the Proj Damage, but since we do get since we do get Sniper giving us a little bit of Proj Speed, and we are running slower Proj, you will and won't notice it. Just pick between it. This is more damage, this is more quality of life. Just go for whatever you prefer. Blood Rage to maintain Frenzy Charges. You need Leech somewhere. You need a little bit of Mana Leech. That's how we get this, even though we have the Fire Leech. Crit. Get the Ellie Pen. In 2.6, we'll be able to link this way, so this routing is fine. You can go point blank if you want the damage, but you don't need it. You really don't need the damage. If you want it, you can take it for 1 point. Arrow Dancing to help against Reflect. Crit. Life. Crit. Frenzy Charge. Take Phase Acro. If you get Acro, just take it. Just fucking take it. If you want to be the dude that doesn't take it, don't tell me about it. Just drop these points, get a jewel, but just take Phase Acro. Just take it. Pierce. Good. Good. Alright, why do I do this routing? This seems really weird, right? This is just a case of we haven't got any easily accessible life. Yes, this will be routed through here later. And you just want to pick both up. Right, we need crit, so we take Assassination. So this is what the routing would normally look like. Right? The routing would normally look like this. Now for 2 points, which we have to spend, you can get 24% damage, so a 12 and a 12. You really haven't got anything else to pick up, so you may as well take it. Now, if you just compare these two notes, 2644, 27, it's more efficient because the Ellie damage just scales better and that 20% crit chance. So make sure you route this way if you take both. And that's the Chieftain version. All pretty straightforward, all pretty basic. Right, now if you look at the DPS numbers, this is with all of the, this is with the totem drops and this is with the killed recently and the enemy is already burning. So this is with everything activated. Now a Berserker, the numbers are really, really close, but keep in mind that the Berserker doesn't have all of these modifiers. This is just right off the bat, without killing recently, without having to drop a totem. These are just what your numbers look like. You don't need to do any bullshit with it. And also, in this tree, we've taken Volpat, meaning we've dropped some DPS nodes. With identical trees, the Berserker will be slightly more damage, but it has a thing of, it's just consistent. It does have the increased damage taken, and it doesn't have the free endurance charge generation, so that's something you need to consider. We do take Volpat, which combined with Cloaked and Savagery means you're only going to die to one-shots. Basically, that is what it is. If you don't like it, you can drop it, but otherwise, these two trees, very similar, and it's just a case of personal preference between the two. Not really too much to comment. Right, there is this Life Inquisitor tree, and there's also a CI Inquisitor tree. I'm not a massive fan of Inquisitor for this. You have so much travel, you have to get Vitality Void, you have to get Volpack so you don't one-shot yourself, and you just get very little flexibility. If you do it as Life, this is roughly what your tree would look like. If you want to, you can cut this section and spend a little more points around here, but you're very, very starved. I don't like doing this as Life. Right, this is what the Assassin looks like. The Assassin is kind of awkward. The Assassin and Deadeye trees basically look identical. One thing I will note is if you do take this routing up to Written in Blood, you have access to damage over time and life regen. Now, the damage over time doesn't double dip, but it's still very good scaling. And the life regen means that if you want to have positive regen for stuff like Blood Rage, these three nodes are very efficient to take up for that one purpose, and mess around with it as you want. We go for just arrow dancing and relying on evasion and stuff like that to not screw us with Volpact. So if you want a build which doesn't need Volpact, then you can go with this tree. And again, looking at the DPS numbers, substantially lower than both the Chieftain and the Berserker, but you have the advantages of easy power charge generation. You're not reliant on having to use, Dream Jewels, power charge on crit setups, or Assassin's Mark. You can go for something which looks kind of like this. If you want to, you can drop this package, drop this package, drop this package, and come up this way. The reason why we do take all of this is just to have the regen and a little bit of quality of life. Again, just sort of pick your poison between the trees. Deadeye will have more raw DPS than the Assassin, and it's important to note that Farshot is not scaled into this at all. Now, Farshot does not double dip, and also it's worth noting that Point Blank, both of these do not double dip. They are still very, very effective scalers, and the potential DPS output of a Deadeye is incredibly high when you factor in this up to 30% more damage. So if you want to have a more defensive Point Blank kind of playstyle, where you get the quality of life of having Point Blank, but actually be able to be distant, Farshot is the answer to that. You also get extra proj, which is really juicy, and increased radius of area skills. I mean, if you do want to run a Blasphemy, if you do want to use an Orb of Storm's power charge on crit setup, or just for whatever, Vol Burning Arrow, that's really nice quality of life. A bunch of free crits. It's worth noting we can't go for Rupture because we have 100% fire damage. We can't cause bleeding. So Rupture does nothing for us. And obviously this is a Pierce build, so we're not going to go Chain. So you go for Powerful Precision. So that's the Deadeye version. If you do want to do it as either a Raider or a Pathfinder, you can. Neither of which are that amazing. Personally, I prefer Deadeye just from raw DPS output, but the trees will all look fairly similar. Now, this is an interesting one. So someone asked me to make a blood magic tree, and you'll notice, wow, the DPS is really high. Now, both Lava Lash and Iron Grip for anything Marauder based is really, really powerful. The problem is getting the points over here is awkward, right? So you have to spend 6 points traveling to get Lava Lash, then spend 8 points to get Iron Grip, and then all of this, right? So basically, getting all of these means you need to cut efficient damage scaling here. And just point for point, the Ellie damage works out better until you have everything unlocked. So if you're in like the high 80s or 90s, this is just better in small increases. Obviously, when you have the 6 points, if your option is like going between these Ellie nodes and something else and just Lava Lash, when you eventually have Lava Lash, it's really good. but you need to spend the points traveling there and cut from something else. To make this sort of routing make sense and still have enough life, you need to go with Blood Magic. If you go with Blood Magic, that means you can't run Herald of Ash. So then you turn Herald of Ash off, and then suddenly the DPS becomes less PogChamp. So it's something you need to consider. If you do want to do a Blood Magic version, you can do this. Yes, I do know that Essence Worm exists, but then you're losing out on a very good DPS ring. So if you want to do Blood Magic, you can do something which looks something like this. You can mess around with it more. If you do a non-crit version, it will do less DPS, but you have that option there. There is Slayer. Slayer is another interesting one. Slayer, much like Chieftain, when you have all of your perks active, is actually incredibly powerful. And I actually think that Slayer is my favorite out of the options of Deadeye and Assassin. I think Chieftain and Berserker are like the tier 1 picks, and this is like a nice middle pick. So Valpact is obviously amazing, but it feels bad for mapping because you want to have, you know, positive regen for stuff like Blood Rage. You want to go run traps, you want to go do Uber, you want to do random farming. Just for doing all kinds of content, it feels bad being Valpact. Valpact is great for like face tanking bosses, but for general mapping, it feels kind of awkward, right? Well, you get Super Leech, which isn't as good as Valpact, but it has that like instant full healing effect. And you also get Cull. You get Onslaught, which is really fucking powerful. You can consider Cull like a massive more multiplier in a way, because you're effectively killing stuff more, so you can think of it as a DPS increase. You get 20% more damage if you've killed recently. Again, this calculation is with we have killed recently. Without it, then the numbers become lower than both the Assassin and the Deadeye. And, you know, you get the increased radius of skills, which helps with your utility stuff. It helps with Vile Burning Arrow if you choose to run it, and stuff like that. This is basically a nice middle ground between all of the options. You can do stuff with Champion, in which case your tree will basically look something like this, and you would probably go for Fortify and Worthy Foe, or a mix of taking all little DPS increases, since these all double dip, and then Worthy Foe if you want to go full defense. But at which point you may as well play an actual a full offense ascendancy rather than this. But yeah, that's kind of what it looks like as a Slayer, and I would recommend this version. And then someone did make a Inquis tree, which is a CI Inquis tree. It has pretty similar routing. It has 206% increased energy shield on the tree. There should be an energy from within there, which isn't being calculated, so it's actually higher ES than that. He's routed through this way to use a Crown of Eyes. If you want to do a CI Inquisitor, it will look something sort of like this. And for the record, if you do want to do a non-crit Elementalist, I would recommend a tree something like this. Back when I used to play budget Burning Arrow Elementalists back around Perendus, my trees used to look something kind of like this. One thing which is kind of nice about this tree is you're not reliant on many uniques. You kind of get to pick everything up. You get your conversion built in through Avatar Fire. You get very efficient burn, scaling, but the DPS really like pales in comparison to some of the other builds. It's just kind of like you have that option. What will I be playing next league? It will depend on balance changes. If we do get some ascendancy changes, please, I really want to make Scion great again. Then, you know, we might do something different. Obviously, this routing will change, but this is just some preliminary thoughts. But it looks like I will most likely be picking between either Chieftain or Slayer. The reason why I'm saying Chieftain or Slayer is personally I just like playing with positive regen. While Valpact is amazing, I find playing life-based Valpact builds kind of frustrating for just day-to-day mapping. So I would go for something more centered around this. The other thing is, since I am playing in duo party, I want something which has utility. Chieftain has the enemies near your totem. Deal less damage. This will affect my allies, and the enemies near your totems take increased fire damage. This will affect my allies, who again is a Scorching Ray Quad Curse Occultist. So the synergy is pretty real between the two builds. And then obviously if I go Slayer, then we have a Super Cull, which is really nice for party play. And you do get the quality of life of having, you know, the extra movement speed built into there. But yes. Now, would I recommend Burning Arrow? This is another thing. So these are the builds, these are how I would do them. Would I recommend Burning Arrow? One thing that I want to note, the biggest issue you have with Burning Arrow is it feels kind of slow to play. It does feel kind of clunky. It does amazing damage, but it doesn't have great movement speed. The ways that you get great movement speed is by doing stuff with like Queen of the Forest, but the second you start doing stuff with Queen of the Forest, you're then dropping Lionized Vision, at which point you're then losing links, and then you kind of want to be using stuff like Zoft Nurture, stuff like Elementalist, so that you're not feeling like you're gimping yourself too hard on the Prolif. So if you do want a super clear speed build, which clears through maps in half a minute, this might not be the build for you. But if you want something which can comfortably kill everything in the game, and again, Mathel's been showing how much DPS you can do with Burning Arrow, and that is without the double ignite threshold duel which will be coming in the next patch, then I would recommend playing around with it. Take some tips from other people, see what other people have been doing. This is what I would recommend for those crazy life players out there. But yeah. Also, I do want to just quickly say thank you for all of the support that everyone's been showing, both on my stream and on my YouTube recently. It has been pretty PogChamp. I've messed up my hair. This is going to annoy me on my outro. But yeah, basically, you guys are awesome. Thank you for the support. Just in terms of sharing my content, watching my content, Patreon bros are all really cool. People who go crazy with the credit cards and the donations, you know who you are. And I look forward to producing more, hopefully top keck entertainment for you. I'm Tarke. Have a good day. Bye-bye.